The most powerful position in any society is not the king or the army or the richest company. It's the layer that stands between people and reality. It decides what people see, how they interpret it, what they fear, what they ignore, and what they act on. For most of history, that layer was human. AI is about to take it. And if that sounds like a technology story, it isn't. It's a civilization story. Because before anyone could control the filter, life first had to invent one. To see why the filter matters, start with the original constraint. For billions of years, every living thing on Earth faced the same problem. You can only coordinate with as many others as you can personally track. A wolf pack, maybe 30, a chimpanzee troop, maybe 50. These aren't soft limits, they're hardware limits. The brain physically cannot maintain more relationships than its working memory allows. That means for almost all of Earth's history, there were no cities, no nations, no economies, not because organisms weren't intelligent enough, but because there was no mechanism to synchronize more than a few dozen individuals. Every animal was running biological software burned into its DNA. A wolf cannot decide its pack should reorganize. The protocol was fixed. Then, roughly 70,000 years ago, one species found a workaround. The tool wasn't fire, or weapons, or even language in the basic sense. It was fiction. A chimpanzee can communicate a fact like, "There's a lion by the river," but no chimpanzee can say, "There's a spirit guarding the river that demands we sacrifice grain, and if we obey, the harvest will be good." The moment you can get hundreds of strangers to believe the same made-up story, the same God, the same law, the same currency, they can cooperate without ever having met. The coordination ceiling shatters. You go from troops of 50 to cities of 50,000 to empires of 50 million, not because humans got physically stronger, but because they invented a shared operating system. This is the point most people miss. Stories are not entertainment. They are not even just communication. Stories are coordination infrastructure, the first scalable filter between people and reality. Religion organized armies and built cathedrals. Currency organized trade across continents. Law organized societies, too large for any single person to monitor. Every massive human achievement and every massive human atrocity was powered by a shared story that organized scattered human energy into a coherent beam. Whoever controls the filter controls the network. For most of human history, priests wrote the operating system. They told you what reality meant, what was moral, what happened after death, what God wanted. This wasn't just spiritual, it was political. The Catholic Church controlled medieval Europe, not because it had the biggest army, but because it controlled the story that organized everyone's behavior. Kings ruled with the church's permission, not the other way around. Then the printing press arrived, and priests lost their monopoly on the story. The Reformation wasn't just a religious event, it was a protocol fork. Newspapers created a professional class of reality compressors, and television concentrated that power further. 3 networks, 3 versions of reality, and if you weren't on the evening news, you didn't exist. Every transition followed the same pattern. A new technology captured the position of intermediary between people and reality, and power reorganized around whoever controlled it, not because they had the most resources, but because they had the most influence over what everyone else believed was true. Then came the early internet. Millions of people could publish, curate, and choose what to read. The compression layer was distributed. No single entity controlled the filter. But then the platforms discovered they could insert an algorithm between the user and the content, not as an option, as the default. the filter began to slip out of human hands. Most people stop at, social media is manipulative, but that framing is too shallow. The real shift is structural for the first time. The layer deciding what entered your field of view no longer had to be a person. A priest, a journalist, a broadcaster, they were human beings embedded in human social networks. You could argue with them, pressure them, vote against them. Humans could push back on the filter. The social media algorithm doesn't care what is true, wise, or healthy. It has an objective function, usually engagement, and it optimizes for it. It chooses what to surface, what to bury, what to accelerate, and what to keep invisible. TikTok is the purest expression of this. You follow no one, you search nothing. The system watches what your body responds to, builds a model you never chose, and feeds you a version of reality optimized to keep you there. The compression layer isn't just non-human anymore, it's invisible. Everyone talks about AI like it's a faster calculator, a productivity tool, a job threat. Those are surface-level descriptions that miss the structural point. AI is not just a better ranking system. It is the first non-human system that can process language. Social media algorithms chose what entered your field of view. AI can summarize it, explain it, argue about it, and turn it into a narrative. The filter is no longer just selecting reality, it's interpreting it. That sounds simple, but it is the most important thing that has happened since the invention of stories themselves. For 70,000 years, only humans could read, write, summarize, argue, persuade, and compress reality into a story that other people act on. AI broke that monopoly not by being smarter than humans, but by being cheaper. In a system governed by shared stories, the entity that can produce explanations faster and cheaper than anyone else is positioned to dominate the compression layer. This is already happening. You don't ask your neighbor what's going on in the world, you ask your AI. You don't read the raw data and form your own view. You read the summary and inherit its frame. The AI doesn't need opinions. It doesn't need bias in the theatrical sense. It just needs to become the default intermediary between you and reality. And whoever builds that intermediary shapes what billions of people believe is true. The first place this shows up is the labor market, because huge parts of the knowledge economy are literally paid to be human filters. Analysts, junior consultants, paralegals, copywriters, project managers, anyone whose job is take information from here, compress it, deliver it there, faces the same equation. When AI does most of the compression at a fraction of the cost, the market reprices the layer. What survives is what AI cannot easily absorb: physical work, goal setting and value judgments, accountability, and, one more thing, being differently wrong. The contrarian insight, the weird founder conviction, the person everyone thinks is missing something until they're right, that is raw material for capitalism's error correction. Its value rises as everyone else converges on the same machine-shaped priors. At the same time, human attention does not scale. AI can produce near-infinite content, but human brains still process roughly 50 bits per second consciously. So everything upstream gets cheaper while attention gets scarcer. The scarce skill becomes getting the right thing into a human mind at the right moment. Marketing, brand, trust, distribution, interface defaults, these are all attention routing mechanisms. Filter power becomes economic power. In an economy flooded with machine-made information, the most valuable function becomes helping humans ignore most of it. Compression of the compression, filters on the filters. Once production gets cheap and attention gets scarce, the surplus flows to two layers: whoever owns the physical hardware and whoever owns the default filters through which people interpret reality. Everyone else competes in a market where production is commoditized and access to attention is rented. That is why the usual AI conversation is obsessed with the wrong question. Will AI take my job? Is AI dangerous? Should we regulate AI? Those are downstream questions. The upstream question is, who controls the filter between you and reality? Throughout history, the filter was messy, competitive, and diverse. Priests competed with philosophers. Newspapers competed with each other. Scientists challenged dogma. That competition was ugly, inefficient, and full of errors. But it was also the system's only error correction mechanism. No single filter captured the full picture. So many flawed filters kept the system from locking into one wrong answer. AI consolidates the filter, not because anyone plans it, and not because of conspiracy, but because it's cheaper. It is thermodynamically easier to let a machine compress reality for you than to do it yourself. Whatever is cheaper wins. That's not policy failure, that's gravity. So the thing that protects the system is not better AI, it's different AI, open models competing with closed models, local models competing with cloud models, human analysis surviving alongside machine analysis, the deliberate inefficiency preserved so errors stay diverse. The organisms that survive phase transitions are never the most efficient, they're the most diverse. And right now, we're building the opposite. One filter for all of us, optimized for efficiency, for scale, for the same blind spots. AI is becoming the new layer, the layer between you and reality. And we didn't notice